Good morning and welcome everyone to the session here on achieving product-led growth. I am Tom Evans, and before we jump into the presentation, as always, we want to thank the sponsors that have helped make this possible. And I just know from my work with ProductCamp Austin and being on the board 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, that getting these sponsorships were so important and such an important part of making the ProductCamp Austin the great event that we're able to execute here twice a year. And so make sure to reach out to them and thank them. And if you get a chance, go and visit them in their channels also. So let's go on into this discussion around product-led growth. And, you know, if you think about these different products here or applications here, and you look at that, you start to realize a lot of these are pretty familiar to us. And I'm going to guess that most of us here are using at least 3, maybe 4 of these already in our regular day-to-day lives. And, you know, one of the questions that we have about this is, well, what makes these so successful? And it's not just that, you know, we're using them, but one of the big things that really has driven them is that they are product-led companies. And they're great examples of organizations, both from a individual perspective as well as really a business-to-business perspective, that have been able to go and achieve their growth by being product-led companies. I'm going to launch a quick survey here just to kind of see where everybody is in terms of their journey right now. And so this is going to be in the Slack channel. And hopefully this works okay. It should have just, it should have just gone in there. There are 8 options for you to choose from on which of these things do you do today. And as you read through them, it should be a multi-select. I'm hoping it will be a multi-select. And just go and check those that you are currently doing already, if you would. And, you know, are you offering self-service to help them acquire and activate? You know, do you offer some free version of your product? All right, it's look like it's not letting you do self-check or multi-select. So go ahead, just select, you know, the primary one. I was hoping to get a multi-select on that, and I apologize. It's not letting you do that. All right, I see him moving around. Sorry about that. Like I said, I was hoping to be multi-select, and it's not being there. But definitely some of those that we're seeing here, I'll just share it real quickly over here on the screen, is, you know, a spread of different options that are going on here. So, you know, doing the self-servicing, letting them experience value, you know, for free, you know, we as an organization knowing exactly what drives the features that we deliver, et cetera. So it looks like there's at least a small representation of you that are achieving some of these things that we're talking about here that really do lead to being product-led growth type companies. So what is product-led growth? Well, it starts with Patron Tequila. Oh, wait a minute here. Sorry, that's for afterwards. That's the happy hour one. So product-led growth are companies that use their product as the way to acquire customers, to bring them into full usage of it, and to actually retain it. And so if we think about most of the way that companies have focused doing their customer acquisition and driving it to monetization, we often focus a lot on doing marketing and sales. But product-led growth really put the product at the center of their marketing and sales activities. So let's just kind of build up a little bit around this, looking at some of the history of how we do things. And so I think probably all of us have seen this in one form or the other of what we call the marketing and sales funnels. And so there's a certain set of activities up here that marketing is doing to help drive that awareness, and continue doing marketing activities to drive potential prospects down to a point of where they become what we call a marketing or a sales qualified lead, or sometimes they call it marketing qualified lead, but sales qualified lead. And so at that point, we hand it over to the sales team, and the sales team takes it on through the rest of the process to achieve a purchase. What's interesting about that is if you look at this traditional approach, so often the customer had to go through this marketing and sales process all the way to the end before they could actually go and start using the product. And so that's the way that we did marketing and sales, in the world of software specifically for so long. Well, product-led growth is actually taking that concept and turning it upside down and turn it into different ways that we look at it. And so instead of looking at this as a funnel, we're really looking at it as a flywheel. And yes, there are some characteristics of a funnel that still exist as we think about being product-led growth. But since we're putting the product at the center of what we're doing, we're using the product as that starting point. We're giving our customers an opportunity to experience the product before we start getting into the side of closing the sale as such. And so it's that experience of value that they're achieving before we even start to monetize them in any form. And why do we talk about it as a flywheel versus a funnel? It's because we have multiple opportunities. If we structured our product-led growth product in the proper way, we have multiple opportunities to drive them through new value into achieving new value, which is going for us lead to monetization. And so don't think of it as a one-time transactional, we close the deal, etc. It really is, we're going to develop a relationship with them and continue to go and find new ways to deliver new value, which hopefully that they will be paying for. But it's all begins with the discovery of that value within the product. Well, why should we consider doing product-led growth? Well, if you look at some of the research that has been done by OpenView Partners, they have shown that even just from a stock perspective, those companies that are product-led companies, those here in the green, achieve a much higher overall stock performance and value than what the more traditional SaaS companies have been able to achieve, and definitely much better than what we've seen with the overall composite indexes on this stock exchange. But why does this happen? Why are they able to do that? And there's a couple of really important factors here. One is that those companies that are product-led growth in general are going to reduce their cost of acquisition, of customer acquisition. And some research shows that to be as much as 30 or 40% less than what the traditional sales and marketing approach has been. They're able to grow it more efficiently. And so, if you look at a lot of the traditional sales, marketing, implementation for more the sales-led type products, there's a lot of interaction that has to happen between us and our customers. And so there's a lot of manual work that goes into it. And so with a product-led approach, we're actually more efficient because we are making things more seamless, more self-service for them to be able to achieve without having to have the high levels of intervention that we typically have to do in a product sales. And I think the last point I really want to focus on is this: from a sales perspective, you're improving a lead quality. And so I'm not saying that if we go into a product-led growth model that we have to be completely, there's no sales at all, but we're actually, since we're using the product to lead in this, we already know that the customers that become sales qualified are much better qualified than those that have come through our traditional marketing channel. And of course, we want to have happy users. And so making happy users is an important part of the product-led growth. So to be successful in product-led growth, we have to be able to use data. We have to be able to use metrics to track how we are acquiring our prospects and our customers, how we're moving them into achieving that initial value. How do we continue to track them as they go and achieve additional value and greater revenue, all the way up to becoming paying customers, being very happy customers that we're able to retain, and they actually go and start to do some of those referrals for us. Now, you have probably heard of these before, often called the pirate metrics. And it's just the acronym that was created based upon, the first letter of each of those. So the pirate metrics are often what we talk about. But we cannot be successful in doing product-led growth unless we're able to go and have these metrics well defined and to be able to track them as they go through that process. So this is just some of the examples of stages that you may be looking for. So, tracking those that were introduced to the product, those who went into actually a sign up, those who achieved some usage of the product, etc. And so those are those stages of the process that we're looking for. And like I said, yes, there is some funnel characteristics to it, but this is also a rotating relationship. It's more of that rotation through it versus it being just a funnel usage around it. Well, let's talk about some of the characteristics or things that we need to be able to achieve to do that. And that first step is that activate. And so this really does include that part of acquisition and activation. And quite often we are going to be using marketing programs to do the initial part of the acquisition process. But once they have reached and learned about us, how do we take them to a point where they have achieved initial value? And we use the term activation on that. And so activation is something that you as an organization have to define specifically what that means for your particular product. And it will connect back into a point where your prospect has achieved enough value that you believe that they're going to go on and continue to use the product, more and more. We can go and lead them somewhat through that process. I was just thinking here about Slack as I was connecting into the ProductCamp Austin Slack channel yesterday. It actually was prompting me through that process. And it was like, add a picture to your profile, send a message, join a channel, connect to one of our applications, etc. And so they actually had in there a guidance to move me through that process of what, possibly was their definition of activation. And what's important about this idea of activation is we shouldn't have to go through a lot of hurdles and a lot of steps to reach that point where we experience that initial value. So well thought out, well constructed product-led growth products really have created efficiencies in the way that we get to that value. They make the onboarding process very easy for us to do. They don't ask us lots of questions that aren't necessary for us to achieve that first level of value. Now, they may ask those questions later on, but they make that process of getting onboarded and achieving value as quickly and as seamless as possible. And of course, if we reach that point of activation and we do use a sales team as part of our sales process, those become very good qualified leads at that point. Another thing to think about is, getting them to adopt. And so now we've gotten them to where they're discovered the value, they're using the value, but we want them, if we're going to be successful as a company, at some point, we need to move them into a level of monetization, and so that they are continue to use the product and they actually upgrade or take on some of our plans that are paying type plans. The key here is not to put that firewall or the paywall there in front of them actually achieving value. What we want to do is to get them to a point where they are able to realize enough value, and then based upon the value they've already achieved, they can see the other side of that paywall and say, that is clearly value that I want to be able to experience. Or the usage of the product has been sufficient enough that they are able to reach that point and say, I know that these are other things that I would like to be able to do, and I can see that that value is being offered. Again, a lot of that can be driven through self-service, allowing them to make that next step on their own without having to reach out to a sales team. Now, there are going to be some products where it's appropriate for them to be able to reach out to a sales team, and you use that as part of the process of driving that additional value. The other part that's really important goes back to the metrics that we were talking about. We have to have really good metrics in place in understanding what are the key characteristics or the key value of our products that is driving that adoption, and then making sure that we adjust our pricing accordingly so that we are maximizing the revenue that we're able to achieve based upon those items of value that our customers are experiencing. Now, we also want them to adore the product. And so that's what really drives us to retention. And, there's several ways that we could achieve it. If I think about products that I've used that are, really doing the product-led growth, one of the things is that ease of resolving issues. And so if I can go on to a self-help channel or into a self-help, a self-service site of the product, and I can go and put in a quick search, and I'm able to get a useful answer that actually directs me to overcoming that, that is just one step in adoring. We as customers or product managers need to be listening to their feedback. And I think of several of the products that I have been using over the last 6 months, on a much more regular basis than what I may have used them in the past. And one of the things that really impresses me is when I have a question and I put that out to the service team, that they are able to respond quickly and give me accurate information that has helped me to improve the usage of the product. This again requires us to have metrics in place. We want to be able to have metrics in place to see what our customers are using, which things they're using regularly. If we believe that there are parts of our product that they should be using but they aren't, that's also could be an indicator to us that we're not moving them into that state of adoration. And then the last part of this is to get them to advocate. And so I'm going to age myself a little bit, but I can remember when Hotmail was one of the earlier web-based email programs, and they actually created their own viral mechanism by including in every email that they said, get your free link for Hotmail. And they were able to achieve some, explosive growth at that time just because they had created a way for all of their customers to advocate for them. And I guess in that case, they were advocating whether they wanted to or not. Well, what we really want them to do is to advocate because they want to advocate on our behalf. Now, there are going to be some apps such as Slack, which we're using now, that really advocate on their own because the value comes from sending a message to somebody else or participating in a group there like we're in. And so having that type of thing. But there may be other products that you're using that initially you may not, you as an individual may be getting the value, but as soon as you're able to go and share it with someone else, then they start to recognize that value. So imagine that you're using, a product, I'm going to put out an example here, QuickBooks, okay? I happen to use QuickBooks. And, with QuickBooks, as soon as I can go and share a report with somebody else and get some feedback on it, they see the value of it. Or if you're using one of the product management apps that are available, we have ProdPad here as one of our sponsors, or Pendo as one of the sponsors. As soon as you are able to go, even if you're the only one using that, but as soon as you're able to go and create a report that shares the value of it and it shares the insight or the knowledge or the work that you've done in a very effective way, that's another way that we can advocate. And of course, creating an online community is another way to advocate. If you think about the products that you have reviewed and decided to use, how many of them really tied back because you were able to go and see on an online community the positive discussions that were going on around those products? And so again, a key part of that is that ability to get our current customers to also drive that usage of our products. So I think one of the questions that we have is product-led growth really for you? And so if you look at the characteristics of most of the products out there that are product-led growth, or those that most easily achieve, these are some of the things that we see in common around them, okay? So it's something that an individual user can quickly adopt and gain value from. They're able to share with others. We give them a possibility of actually trying and using the product before we actually start trying to monetize that. So these are, and that quick time to value. But if you look at other products that, such as they solve an organizational need. And what I mean by that is that the value is not achieved unless you have multiple members of the organization using that. So if you think about, the traditional ERP systems, one person is not going to be able to go and help drive the value of that. It's going to take multiple users in an organization to be able to use that to start achieving some of that value. It's one of those, if you have something that requires multiple stakeholders to make that decision to buy and adopt into it, that's going to be a little more difficult situation to achieve product-led growth. If you have a lot of services required to even get somebody on board to using it, that can get in the way of product-led growth. I think of one product that I trialed here several months ago, and what was interesting to me is, if they had on the website, would you like a trial? And I entered my information and said yes, and they made me have to go and have a call with a salesperson. And then once the salesperson, talked to me, then they finally went, and I think there was actually some manual onboarding that they had to go through before I was able to get access and start to use that. And so, that to me felt like it got in the way of, that product-led opportunity that they had. And there's just some other aspects around there. I'm going to tell a really quick story, to kind of do a compare and contrast of this. And it's relevant for us as product managers because about, 16, 17 years ago, I did some work with a company that was building a software product to help product managers manage requirements. And it was developed as a client server type software application. And to be able to purchase it, it would cost, minimum $12,000, for a typical implementation, maybe up to $25,000 to get the product management team on this platform to be able to use it. Well, guess what? There's not a single product manager that has the budget authority, even though they recognized how much they needed a product like this. Not a single product manager had the budget authority to be able to go and authorize that much. Most product management directors would not be able to do that for their teams. They usually were going to have to go up to at least a VP or even a C-level officer to be able to get approval for that. And so, in all honesty, we had a very hard time selling that product because of the complexity of the sales process. Now you look today at the products that are available to help product managers manage requirements and roadmaps. And guess what? You as an individual product manager can go out and sign up and start getting value from that immediately without having, and you may possibly have authority to even authorize that much on your credit card, whether it's, $50, $100, $125, a month type thing, or at least your director is able to do that. And then once you start using it and you share what you're able to do with others in your organization, now you're starting to add, additional users to it. And so, I just kind of comparing and contrasting that difference of experience that our customers go through when we're product-led versus following the traditional marketing and sales approach. Now, one thing I want to say is I don't want to look at this and think about it as being an all or nothing type situation, because if you are currently, traditionally marketing and sales and lead. Does that mean you can never gain any level of product led? Of course not. You can definitely think about how you can go and offer some initial value either as a free trial or as in a freemium type version that can get, and put a boundary around it, and then eventually lead that into maybe where it is more of an enterprise type sales situation. So don't think of that as an all or nothing. There are actually companies out there, who blend this together. If you look at, Zoom, for example, actually does. So Zoom, you can sign up for an individual account. You can use a free version. They limit it to 40 minutes. If you find that you need more than a 40-minute meeting, which most of us do, then we start paying for it. But they also then have a sales model in place for more of the enterprise type sales. HubSpot was another company that used to use the traditional model of marketing and sales, and then they've changed over into being a product-led type organization. So enough on that. We got just another couple of minutes here. And let me see if I can get this posted in here real quickly. And this is a single select poll. So let me drop that in here. And then also we'll take a moment here to look at some of the questions that come up. So I know there was a lot going back in there. So I want to make sure that we get a chance for some of those questions. So if you get a chance, please let us know your thoughts on where you think you are in terms of doing product-led growth. Is it something that you definitely think you can do? Maybe you'll consider it, or maybe it's not necessarily for you. So summarize again, it's product-led growth is about putting the product at the middle of what you do in terms of a sales and marketing. There's a lot of benefit that companies are achieving from that, as we showed earlier. And so, the question really is it right for you, and what steps can you take next to be able to do that? So, now it's time for the happy hour. So, start thinking about the happy hour. You can start putting together your product-led growth sunrise. And also, as we go into the Q&A period, and we have just a couple of minutes left for that, we at 280 Group want to offer you a free download for this assessment that you can do of your product-led growth maturity. So there's a URL available for that. And with that, let's try to answer some of the questions that have come up during the session. Any questions there? I'm just looking through. Donick, I know people who still use Hotmail. Very good. Yes, there are. I do get those on occasion. All right.
It's interesting from just working with higher ed, because everybody feels like they're super behind, but it's also just kind of a funny thing to see how our marketing communications are very different from when marketers or software developers or whoever are your customers,
Mm-hmm. All right. There was a question Tyler had asked about, different tiers of service. And I think I talked about that a little bit where, if I have a product offering that can start with just an individual user within an organization and offer that as part of the product-led portion of it, and then as we start to see adoption of multiple users within that organization, then that starts to say, is there an enterprise opportunity, and be able to go and start transitioning that more into an enterprise type opportunity where there could be, a higher level of configuration. There's a company right now that I've had some conversations with, and that's one of the things that stood out to me is they're completely sales driven with a lot of services onboarding. And my question to them is, can you go and do a little bit of product led where you get maybe one or two users within an organization who actually adopt it and start sharing the work that they do with others, and then transition that into a, more of a typical sales approach and onboarding associated with that?